Welcome to Pickup's next edition of On the Move podcast. Today I've got Stephen Warner in the studio to talk more about his journey with Absolute Pets. Stephen's the CEO. Stephen, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Antonio. Good to be here.
So tell us, Steve, Absolute Pets has been around for a while. How did you get involved?
Yeah, so the business was started 20 years ago. It was a vet and his wife. They grew to about 8 stores, and we had 2 really exceptional entrepreneurs who approached us with the idea about acquiring Absolute Pets and growing it. So at the time I was at a private equity company. They approached us needing capital to acquire it and obviously the capital to fulfill the growth ambitions, which meant growing the business significantly. So we looked at it, did quite a bit of research. Globally, you had these huge companies which were listed on some of the biggest stock exchanges in the world, or were owned by some big private equity companies. And so we knew that the market was there in the developed countries. And South Africa was certainly a country of pet lovers. There were a lot of vet shops or pet stores out there, but there was no one brand. So there was it was an industry ripe for some sort of a consolidation and having one bigger player to establish a brand and get the economies of scale. So that's essentially how I got involved.
And at the time, competition, was there any competition in the marketplace?
Yeah, so I mean, I think most centers would have had a pet store or vet shop. They would have traditionally been owned by a vet or a smaller group. So there was competition. The nature of the competition is different to how it is now, where you've got bigger groups owning these types of stores. So the nature of that competition has changed, but there's always been a significant offering out there.
And from the early days, I think my experience with delivery and understanding the challenges that come with delivering pet food, it's generally heavy. The whole migration to, or the drive in the early stages to online, how did you, from the 8 stores and getting involved, when did you adopt an online strategy into the Absolute Pets brand?
Yeah, so I think as soon as we'd acquired it, we knew that a omni-channel offering was going to be necessary. It did take a while, obviously, to get things set up, as it generally does with tech development. So that was really setting up the website and the back end. And then there was a lot of learnings along the way. I mean, so e-commerce part of the business does take a longer time to reach break even for the reasons that you've set out. You know, delivery is expensive. Dog food or pet food is generally heavy. You know, the expectation of the customers to have that free, so you'd have to obviously pay for the delivery charge, you'd have to pay for the additional warehousing and the ability to pick that stock. So it was within 2 years that we managed to get an offering out there.
And from 8 stores, obviously expanding your retail presence, and then you've got this growth in sort of the late 2000s, slow growth of e-commerce, weighing up between growing your retail presence or e-commerce presence, was there a strong pull towards the retail side or e-commerce side, or was it a joint strategy together?
Yeah, very much omni-channel, Antonio. I think we knew that growing the retail or bricks and mortar aspect of it was critical, because we needed the sites, we needed access to the good sites, while the development of the industry was quite slow. But in the same way, we knew that there's huge opportunity with e-commerce. So South Africa, as you will know better than me, is behind the trends globally, certainly was back then. So there's opportunity to establish a brand there. I think the challenge was to not compromise profitable sales in stores with unprofitable sales on our e-commerce channels. So I think a lot of what the market was doing at the time was selling at discounted prices, putting a lot into promotion, putting a lot into advertising, whether it was Google ads or social media ads, to drive the turnover. But that came at a cost of the profitability of those businesses. So what we worked very hard on is not shifting people from the stores that was profitable sales from us to unprofitable sales in the e-commerce space. So we kept our prices consistent through the e-commerce channel and the in-store. Our promotions ran across both channels. So I think in the early days, we were a bit slower on the revenue growth than maybe some of the other people out there, but that strategy is proved to be correct, because a lot of those players opened up. They grew revenue quite strongly, but then ended up closing because of cash flow issues and not being able to sustain that growth.
It reminds me of a previous podcast or episode that we had with David Chait, who set up the Vida brand, and the strength that they developed in the actual brand and product. You can look at that and you look at Absolute Pets, they kind of fit together. You've got a very, very strong brand. I'm a Absolute Pets lover. When I go into your stores, I can hands down say I probably get the best service. Excuse me. You get the best service at my local Absolute Pets than I do in any other store, and it resonates with what David and how he built and how he grew the Vida franchise. It resonates with what we see in the Absolute brand. How important has it been to focusing on the product, focusing on the brand, and what goes into actually creating so much value in the actual brand out there?
Yeah, and that I think has been one of the key things that we've focused on. I don't say we've got it right all the time, but more often than not we have. And I think that the differentiator for specialty retail and pet specialty is very much included on that, is around the customer service and the brand. So that goes throughout the whole organization, from the quality of products that we stock, vet recommended food, and the nutrition in particular being very important. That is the best for the pet, but through to all other products. So a toy that is going to last the right amount of time, treats that are good for pets, and then having knowledgeable and trained teams in the store. So our store associates, called Pet Care Advisors, they go through extensive training from the building blocks of nutrition, pet nutrition, through to how to approach customers and engage with them. So as you say, pets are part of the family, a very emotive aspect. And so there's a great way to interact with customers when they're coming into the store, and it's important that we do that. So much of our time on the floor is spent engaging with customers, asking how their pets are doing, and showing a real interest in that aspect. Yeah,
you would think that with pet food, it's the perfect product for delivery. It's consistent. People are generally ordering the same product for their animals week in, week out. The adoption to e-commerce and shopping online, how have you seen that growth? Has there been a very aggressive move towards shopping online and delivery, or do you still see a very strong presence, people shopping in store?
Yeah, so the growth of the online space is by far the greatest, so I don't think that would be a surprise to you. And you are absolutely right, the product does lend itself to e-commerce. It's a bulky product. It is fairly regular, so you'll be able to arrange the delivery for that. So that channel has been growing very, very quickly. I think the store still has a place to play because, as I was saying, people want to come into the bricks and mortar. They want to chat about the animals. They want to get advice around challenges that they might be facing with the pet, whether it's skin issues or behavioral issues, and that's a service that we want to provide. I think as South Africa, as a country, the adoption of e-commerce has increased, and that trend really has continued to play out in the pet space. So from our statistics which we have, we're still way below international comparisons, and we expect that to come still quite strongly. So I think there's going to be good growth in this channel for years to come.
And talking more around sort of like your delivery strategy, how important was it to adopt the correct delivery strategy into your e-commerce strategy?
Yeah, I mean, it's critical, and again, going to the customer service aspect. So I think that's some of the thing that we struggled with in the beginning, is how do we translate that in-store experience, the interaction that we have with our staff, and how do we try and replicate that in the e-commerce channel and with delivery. So that is very important. So the first thing that we do from in-store and to keep customers happy is to make sure that we have product on the shelves. And in the same way with the deliveries, make sure that is reliable, because there's nothing that annoys people more than a late delivery or something that gets mispicked. So that was the first priority. And then there's other ways to make the customers feel special through surprise gifts, what we call surprise and delight. So something that's not expected, to be able to do that. And then the small personal touches with handwritten notes, the way we seal the bags. I think some of the challenges that when you get to a scale, how do you make sure that you're still able to do that and that works? So the delivery was absolutely key, and as the market has shifted, I'm sure we'll touch on that in terms of the on-demand space is meeting that need, as well as your standard delivery terms.
Yeah, so the move to on-demand, obviously at the start of COVID, Checkers 60 guys hit the mark with timing and with their decentralized presence really got it going. When it was from a timing aspect, and initially having a standard 3 to 5 day service, at what point did you decide to sort of adopt that on-demand 60-minute delivery strategy into Absolute Pets, which you call GoFetch now, into the strategy?
Yeah, so GoFetch had been in the pipeline for some time. We'd been chatting to various partners about how to make that work. And there were people already doing the shopper model that were coming into our stores and buying the pet food and then delivering that with the basket. So, and we partnered with some of the bigger brands like Uber, in offering that service as well, but it hadn't quite hit the mark. So coming up with our own offering with our app really was accelerated during COVID, and we saw the demand and obviously the success of a 60/60 offering and the adoption and the South African customers really taking to it. That it accelerated our launch of the app. So I think fortunately we'd been working on it for a while, and the ideas and setting that up was already in place. So then it was 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, where we actually launched the GoFetch on-demand service.
And obviously with having that retail presence and that decentralized, all your retail stores all being decentralized, how quickly were you able to, from start to finish, what are the challenges that you needed to get in place in order to offer that service to your customers?
Yeah, so I think from Absolute Pets point of view, it was quite a bit of system orientated. So even at the moment, it's not perfect in terms of stock availability. But that was the main, I think, challenge, making sure that what we offered to customers we could fulfill. So I think we are in a unique position from a pet point of view with 170 stores out there that we can offer it quite extensively across the company, across the country. So that gave us being able to do some work on our systems to make sure that what we were reflecting was available for purchase. We could fulfill that, and then obviously working with a logistics partner. So that was, I think, the third key element, and that's where our relationship with Picup has come from, in having a partner which can then fulfill delivery from our 170 locations across South Africa.
And if you what advice would you give a company that doesn't necessarily have a strong retail presence, looking to activate a delivery strategy? What advice would you give them? Obviously, there's the surge for on-demand, but not a lot of people can offer the on-demand service because they're not strategically located close to their customers. How do you bridge that gap as a business wanting to increase their customer service through a better delivery strategy?
So it's a good question. I think you've got to see what your customer wants and what they're going to value as to where you put your energies. Yeah? So I think in today's environment, with the need for a more immediate satisfaction or immediate delivery in this case, there is a strong push from customers to have things delivered the same day or delivered within the next hour. But that's not suitable for all products. So I think what I would really encourage people who are looking at it is to make sure that it is still profitable, because if you've got the network and you've got the physical presence to be able to fulfill an on-demand service, I think it works really well. What has been created in the South African market is that people are prepared to pay, even though it's a relatively small cost. They are prepared to pay for the convenience of having it delivered, whereas the more standard delivery, 1 to 3 days, is an expectation from the customers for that to be free delivery. But with the on-demand, that does come with a lot of challenges, logistical challenges, to make sure that that is available and you are operationally set up to do that, because it does come at a cost. So whether that's efficiency of having someone available all the time, if you're doing it through yourself or through a partner, you have to have the presence to be able to do that work, because what you want is a shorter distance for the driver to be able to go from your location where you're fulfilling that stock to the customer's destination.
And if we talk about the quality of the product, we've seen Pick n Pay ASAP team really accelerate their growth. Big focus on fresh produce, focused on the delivery aspect, getting the orders to the customers quickly, fresh and efficiently. How important is the product for you in the pet space in terms of what people shop on the app? Do you have a team behind the scenes constantly evolving, looking at products? Is it a consistent product range? Are you constantly adding products to it to innovate and provide more options to the customers?
Yeah, so I think it's when we look at it, the model between the 1 to 3 days and the on-demand, I think for us it's a balance of range. So in order to do the on-demand, you have to have high in stock, and that then comes down to a tighter range. Whereas 1 to 3 days, customers are still expecting to have a large catalog to browse and to view, but that you can't have in all locations. So that becomes a little bit of the trade-off. So you have a much wider range and a longer delivery time, or a tighter range and a shorter delivery time. With regard to Absolute Pets, I mean, I think everyone would have an example where they've forgotten to buy the pet food and it's last minute and they're home. So the on-demand works really well for that, being able to go on the app and get that delivered within an hour. is a great convenience for pet parents out there. I think the challenge that we do have is adding to the basket. So for sure, it's easier in store when you're engaging with a customer and you're chatting them to be able to recommend additional products, to be able to upsell, where we're still finding that a challenge on the e-commerce space. So the various initiatives, which I'm sure like a lot of e-commerce players are working on to be able to do that. So for us, the basket values are quite high, but the amount of items in the basket is definitely lower than what you would find in store.
And if we look at that, since activating your on-demand Go Fetch, have you seen the numbers progressively increase over time?
Yeah, that has. I mean, I think what we've been very encouraged with the on-demand service is we're capturing more of a customer's spend over a yearly period. So I think it is supplementing our in-store presence very well. There's a certain amount of switching between the two, but if you look at it on an overall basis, we are capturing more of a customer's shop than we had been without an on-demand delivery service. So I think that talks to the convenience. Customers still very much in the pet space shop by convenience. So if they're going past a place, they want to pull in. So having a lot of locations helps in being able to fulfill that, but obviously a delivery service plays a significant role in that too.
So it's really, and resonates with a lot of our other customers, the core group iStore really focused on getting a strategy together as early as possible so they could learn, improve, and continue the service to their customers. It speaks to a lot of the adoption that the view that Absolute Pets has taken is let's get in, let's develop, let's provide a good service, let's increase the service offering, and slowly over time increase the numbers. It seems like that's been a big focal point to Absolute Pets, and it's really exciting to see the growth and how your team is focused on achieving results. Tell me, Steve, the culture. Spoken to a few other people on the podcast around culture. Again, I mentioned earlier, when you walk into the store, the people are really, really friendly. How have you kept that culture? Is it when people sign up to work, or they come for a job interview, do they go through what's the process to get employed? Because it seems like when any person you walk into the store, they've got this way about them. They know about the business. They've got a smile on their face. You've got the radio station talking, in the background, and the experience is fantastic. But what goes into developing that culture amongst your teams?
Yeah, I think it is a challenge to do that with 170 locations and people all over the place. It's very different to having an office where you can come in and see everyone. So I think we work hard on communicating. And that takes a number of forms, and it is filtered throughout the organization. So I think, from myself through to our operations team, which do a fantastic job, and I think the way that we set up operationally with our area managers that have got direct contact through to the stores and contact back into the support office allows us to keep our finger on the pulse as to what is the mood, what's impacting people, what can we do to improve. But the biggest thing is really on our training. So and that takes a number of forms. So we have a fantastic human resources team that spends a huge amount on training. And I think it's kind of evolved, Antonio, from where the industry came from with a strong veterinary background and the vet receptionist, which was always a very friendly person, very engaging, and that has filtered through to the way we operate. So in order to keep that, we do training through our Absolute Pets Training Academy. We try and get together in the physical training sessions, through with our suppliers. So that's a great opportunity for the stores to connect, and then having events. So those events are a small group of stores through to bigger company events, so that we are still there. I think the important thing, I think, with culture is obviously making clear what it is and what the company stands for and what that means down to an individual. So communicating it, but also everyone leading by example. So throughout the whole organization, and in particular from a leadership point of view. And I think that's where we've been really lucky, is that we've got a team that are fantastic leaders, and they're very passionate about the brand. They're very passionate about the performance of the brand. And when you have that filters down through to the rest of the team, and they set high standards, and want the teams to do well, and want everyone to work together to achieving those aims. So I think that's one of the things that we're very proud of, is the people that we have within the business, and that everyone's on the same page with regard to where we're heading.
And you, obviously, going back earlier, you mentioned coming from your background being private equity into this space. If you look back at the last 15 years, what would you put down to the success in yourself? What have you done? What are the 3 most important things you've, or maybe 5, choose the number. What are the most important things you've actually focused on to ensure that you've learned and adapted into retail and omni-channel? But what are the most important things that you've done to ensure that the brand is as strong as it is today?
Yeah, so I think the private equity and I guess investment banking and merger and acquisition was a great learning step for me personally, because you get to see a lot of businesses, you get to see a lot of industries, that you can take into into a different business. Obviously, being in those environments is very different operationally, and I didn't have a background in pets, but businesses that I had seen and been involved in, the buy and build model, I understood well, and I'd seen evidence of that working and being very successful. So you pick up learnings along the way. It also gives you the confidence to say, this works, or this can work. And I think that's an important thing, is saying, okay, we've got this strategy, let's back ourselves and let's go and do it. There are always obstacles, there are always challenges, there are always risks. And a lot of it is down to good fortune, being in the right place at the right time, but you've got to make the most of it. Sure. So I think that was one aspect. I think the team I've touched on, that can't be underestimated, is having a very good a team and a team that is passionate and shares in a vision. And I think one thing that we've tried to do is just be looking a couple of years ahead and seeing what is coming around the corner, and just to prepare ourselves for it. So those things, like you say, maybe start small, but at least you're getting a foothold, you're understanding it. And I think that's the same with e-commerce, the same with on-demand delivery, various other aspects within our business. As the pet trend is evolving and changing, it's making sure that you aware of those and positioning yourself when those trends really start to manifest.
And you mentioned now timing, being at the right place at the right time. We just recently read the announcement that Woolies has taken a major stake in Absolute Pets. We've seen and heard that the Checkers team have also a pet offering that they're taking forward. How important was timing with this acquisition from Woolies?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I mean, globally, the trend of pet speciality has been growing very strongly for a number of years. I think the trend of pet humanization is very much established and growing strongly in developed markets. South Africa is a few years behind, but growing strongly. So I think our strategy was not necessarily want to build a business that was appealing to a bigger player, but we knew that the opportunity was there to grow and to develop a commanding position on in the pet sector. I think the way things have evolved, I couldn't have foreseen at the beginning, but obviously, as you say, the ShopRite group wanting to establish a presence in the pet sector. Food lovers have also made a foray into the market, and obviously, as you mentioned, with Woolworths acquiring Absolute Pets, I think is very, very positive for Absolute Pets. I think it's Woolworths is a phenomenal brand. We're very privileged to be part of that group. They're synonymous with quality, and we have a very strong overlap in terms of customers. So I think the benefits of the combined is something that we're very excited about exploring as in the months and years ahead.
Great. Well, congratulations on the acquisition, Steve, and it brings us to a wrap. Thanks for being on the show. It's really exciting talking to you and working with you and your team. It's absolutely phenomenal to work with a very strong team and a fantastic product like Absolute Pets. I'll continue to do my shopping and just keep the guys at the store. Thanks so much, Steve.
Pleasure. Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you.
Good.